It's a wild story.
Analyzing now. Stand clear.
But there's so many spiritual, beautiful things about it. It's just put me on this mission. Understand what I think my true purpose in life is. Improve the lives of others with every opportunity I have.
Well, good afternoon. How's everybody doing? Good, good. First of all, thank you. It is an honor to be able to be asked to come and share my story with you, really our story. So on April 28th, 1991, at approximately 1 o'clock, I came to this gym, Ravenna Eckstein Community Center Gym, with my wife, the scorekeeper, to play basketball. And on that day, everything changed, because that was the day that I died. Don't look so sad. It gets better. I'm here to tell the story. So. But everything just came to a screeching halt. And it was ironic because I had had so much preparation up until that point. I had overcome so many obstacles. I had heard people tell me what I couldn't do. I didn't care. I did it. I got everything together. I had all my dreams that I had dreamed about all my life were in the palm of my hands. And finally, I felt like I could achieve that. And all of a sudden, everything went away in one fell swoop. But let's start with dreams. That's a good place to start. How many of you have dreams? Powerful dreams. That's why you're here. That's why you're working. You're in the workforce. I want to read this quote from Brian Tracy. The starting point of great success and achievement has always been the same. For people to dream big dreams, there's nothing more important, nothing more that works faster than for you to cast off your own limitations, begin dreaming, and fantasizing about the wonderful things that you can become. And that was the way I was brought up, is whatever you want to do, son, put your mind to it, and you can do it. How many people have families like that? Right? Right? The sky is the limit. So let's talk about a few of my dreams. I'm not any different from any of you, right? There I am, the ripe age of 6 with my first puppy. I wanted to be a fireman. How many firemen do we have in the audience? Oh, wow, really? I wanted to be a policeman. Any policeman? Anybody want to be a policeman? All these people, I don't know if they still do it now. They came to my high school, they did this little demo, and everybody said, oh my God, I want to be that. And I'm from Los Angeles, so of course, I wanted to be an actor. Now, this might be a surprise to some of you. I wanted to be an NFL football player, and there I am in high school. Now, just put yourself in my position. I'm in a frame of mind, I really think I'm going to play professional football. Who can guess how much I weighed in high school? Sir?
146.
Oh, damn. Within 10 pounds, I weighed 136 pounds. In high school, and I thought I could play professional football. Do you think anybody told me that I couldn't play football? No, no one told me I couldn't. Everybody was like, that's a great dream. You go ahead and get it, buddy. Well, my father told me, he said, son, look, I'm not going to tell you you can't play, but I'm going to tell you you'll probably be the smallest person in the NFL ever to play the game, and you're going to have to run the 40 in like 4.5, and you're going to have to bench press 300 pounds. If you can do those things, son, then more power to you. Finally, I decided, you know what I really want to do is help people. And I want to have a different experience. So I actually applied to Phillips Academy Andover, down the street. So it's ironic, the closure that I'm having. We had dinner there last night, and I realized there's more to life than sports. And so I decided I want to be a doctor. I want to be a world-class doctor. So I came back after my summer at Phillips Academy Andover to my high school, and I told my counselor, I said, I want to help people. I want to be a doctor. And not only that, I went to Phillips Academy Andover, and I want to go to Amherst College. What do you think my counselor told me? You will never get into Amherst College, and you will never be a doctor. Has anybody had anyone tell them something they couldn't do? I'm just curious. Hands in the room. I'm surprised. Why would you tell an 18-year-old person that they couldn't do anything? So he told me, 1, you'll never get into Amherst College, and 2, you'll never be a doctor. Now, I'm not bragging, but I was in the class of 1980. But let me just run through these stats before I share that with you. According to the NCAA, only 1.7% of college football players and 0.08% of high school players make it into the pros. So of these 2 goals, which one do you think was the impossible dream? Right? For med school, the AAMC says if you have a GPA of 3.8 and 4, you have a 71% chance of going to med school. If you have a GPA of 3.6, it's a flip of the coin. So why would society tell me that I can't be a doctor, but they would encourage me to be a professional football player? Go figure, right? Anyway, I did end up going to Amherst College. I was in the class of 80, and I'm not bragging. I just happened to have an opportunity to meet with the director of admissions. He and I hit it off, and he said, you know what, I'm going to let you get into the school. And so I was fortunate enough to have that special situation, and I got in. And here's a picture of me graduating, which really captures my entire college experience. Let me sum it up as my son would say, can you dig what I'm throwing down here, right? Okay. Amherst College was the most tumultuous experience that I had in my life. And most of you are too young for this, but 30 years ago, apartheid was actually legal. There was actually a legal slavery system in the world, alive and thriving. And this is me protesting on my graduation day with no shirt. I had on a fishnet shirt, and I had my little man bag, and I was just pissed. Because I had a really terrible experience. I wasted a lot of my school year, even though I had declared myself pre-med. I was going to take a non-traditional approach. I decided to be a psych major. I wasn't going to be a chemistry or biology major. I was going to play sports. And let me tell you something. I was going to have fun. And that is exactly what I did. Did I forget to say that I had fun? No, I'm sorry. Oh, and by the way, I had a lot of fun. But the point is, I was very depressed, and I really didn't have an opportunity to realize my dream of being a physician because I was so angry. There was a lot of racism. There was a lot of tumultuousness. There were cross burnings in 1976 at a major American institution. I just could not believe it. And it really ruined my experience. And this is just a shot from the student newspaper where we ended up taking over the administrative building in order to protest. And so really what I did is I wasted all of that time, all that effort that I spent in high school to prepare myself to go to med school, I wasted. And even though I graduated with a 3.7 GPA, I applied to med school twice and did not get in. And I had a young physician, African-American physician, who came to me and said, you know, tell me what's going on. And I said, well, I want to go to med school, but you know, people are, you know, saying bad things about us and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And he said, well, let me ask you a question. Have you ever heard of Charles Drew? And I said, of course I've heard of Charles Drew. Charles Drew went to Amherst College. Does anyone know what Charles Drew is known for? Charles Drew was known for inventing a way to store blood plasma. It actually changed the outcome of World War II. He was a famous African-American physician. And this doctor told me, he said, you think you had it bad? What about Charles Drew? He graduated from this school, he got his stuff together, and he went to med school and made an impact on the world. So can you. There's no excuse. Get it together. And I thank him for that. It's Dr. Parks, and he's in the book. You'll read about Dr. Parks. And I came up with this model for life based on my experience with Dr. Parks, is really find myself. Find out what it is that you want to do. Figure that out. Set that course out. Lead yourself down that path. And that's where the discipline comes. That's where the execution comes. And then once you're able to do that, now you can lead other people. You can help other people, whether that's family, friends, other folks who want to do what you want to do, but you can lead them down that path. And that was the model that I followed. And so I got myself back together. I went back to school for a year, did all my science courses, got into 4 medical schools, and ended up setting new dreams for myself. And one of those was to get into Boston University School of Medicine, which, again, I'm not bragging. I was blessed to get into med school. But you can see those odds. I didn't get into the NFL, by the way, if anybody was wondering. And then I continued to say, well, look, I am in Boston. How can I leave Boston and not try and get a Harvard education? So again, I was blessed enough to get into the Harvard School of Public Health. And I got a one-year certificate from Harvard, and I was able to do research with a famous orthopedic surgeon there, Augustus White, another mentor of mine who's in the book, and made it possible for me to set my next dream, which was to be an orthopedic surgeon. So now I'm realizing my high school dream of helping people and to be a doctor and to get into orthopedic surgery, which fortunately I was able to get into the University of Washington School of Medicine in their orthopedic surgery program in 1988. So now I've got the world in my hands. All of my dreams are coming true. I published a research paper. I met the right people. I had a mentor. I had everything. And then my wife-to-be came to live with me during my training as an orthopedic surgeon, and I proposed to her. So now everything was set for us. Everything was set. And I applied to get my fellowship at the Cedars-Sinai Kerlan Jobe Clinic, and that is one of the premier orthopedic surgery sports programs. They take care of the Kings, the Lakers, the Angels, everything. And when I was a med student, I actually rotated through that clinic, and on April of 1991, I wrote a letter to Dr. Clarence Shields, who I rotated with, and I said, look, I want you to know my application will be coming for a fellowship in sports medicine. Be looking out for it. And on April 28th, 1991, at 1:00 p.m., this happened. What is this? Ooh, that's close. I'm going to give, who said that? It's a ventricular fibrillation. Yes, that is the VFib arrest. And I had a VFib arrest and dropped dead that day. And all of my dreams, all of that preparation, 4 years of high school, 4 years of college, 4 years of med school, 1 year of master's in public health, and 3 years of orthopedic surgery training, all gone. So my wife was a scorekeeper. I checked myself out of the game because I wasn't feeling well. And I came and sat down next to Jeannie, and I collapsed. And Jeannie screamed at the top of her lungs for all of my colleagues to help me. Actually, the people who saved me, though, were my 4 colleagues on the basketball team who just happened to be anesthesiologists. So there are certain specialties you need to keep in mind, okay? If you're going to go to a third world country, take a gastroenterologist because you will get dysentery, right? If you're going to go skiing in Denver, take an orthopedic surgeon because you will break something. But if you think you're going to have a cardiac arrest, you need to have an anesthesiologist with you. That's all they do all day is resuscitate people. And they did this to a T. And they got me down and they said, no pulse, he's not breathing. Let's start CPR. Now this is the data from 2013. If you have a cardiac arrest, 90% of the people that have a cardiac arrest outside of the hospital never make it to the hospital. This is in 2013, and this was in 1991. Imagine what the odds were then. And of the people, that 10% who make it to the hospital, about 10% of those people actually walk out of the hospital with a brain that they can actually become gainfully employed. So the odds that I was facing are absolutely incredible. So again, having anesthesiologists do that CPR was the best thing that I could do. Now imagine if I had had a cardiac arrest during orthopedic grand rounds and I had to have my orthopedic surgeon buddies resuscitate me. Does anybody know anything about orthopedics? Let me ask you, what's the definition of a double-blind study? 2 orthopedic surgeons trying to read an EKG. Ba-doom-boom. So that just shows you. You can imagine these guys, oh damn, I think I broke him. So I was fortunate not to have had a cardiac arrest at home, or we had actually gone dancing the night before like crazy in public, and the timeliness to be in the right place at the right time with the right people. So they're in the middle of CPR, and in comes the first EMTs with a defibrillator. And I'm kind of a sick-minded guy, and I just have this vision of these EMTs walking in confidently, telling the residents, we'll take it from here, guys. And putting the pads on, and the guy goes, I love this part, clear! And nothing happened. The defibrillator did not work. Resume CPR. So imagine they're doing CPR for probably 5 minutes already. And the defibrillator comes, they stop CPR, it doesn't work, they have to start CPR again. And finally, the firemen come, the paramedics come, and their defibrillator works, and they're able to get me into normal sinus rhythm and take me back to Harborview Medical Center where I actually trained. So imagine the eyes of the people when they see them wheeling in Herman Williams, a resident in that hospital. So I finally made it back to the medical ICU, and there is my wife, Jeannie, wondering several important questions. Number one, is he going to wake up? Number two, if he wakes up, is he going to even know who I am? Number three, is he going to know that we're supposed to get married in 5 months? And number four, is he going to remember that he's taking me to the Nordstrom half-yearly sale? So I finally wake up with the tube in my mouth, and either I pulled it out or the nurses came and pulled it out, but not before I aspirated my own vomit. But finally I was extubated, I was alert, I knew who Jeannie was, and of course I'm making all this up because I don't remember it, but apparently I just said, you know, hey, how you doing, everything. But I kept saying over and over and over again, what happened? And Jeannie would explain to me, well, you know, we were playing basketball, you went down, you had a cardiac arrest, you were resuscitated. And I go, okay. And then she would walk away and come back, and I go, hi, Jeannie, how are you? What happened? And I did that all night long, over and over and over in front of different friends, over and over. So the good news, Herman's awake. The bad news, he's going to be a babbling idiot for the rest of his life because he can't remember anything. Eventually, that short-term memory got better. And finally, I was able to sort of put sequences together. I developed pneumonia from aspirating the vomitus. I also had a central line infection because they put a central line in me on the gymnasium floor. So now I had 2 infections. So I was sitting, and I couldn't go anywhere because I had to be monitored. And we were just sitting, waiting to decide what to do. This, by the way, is my first defibrillator. And I'll hand these out so you guys can touch them and feel them. So we had a visit from a young cardiologist who said, Herman, we have this brand new technology. And what it's designed to do, it will detect a bad rhythm like the one you had while you're playing basketball, and it will actually defibrillate you instantaneously. And we can put this in surgically so you'll always have it. It's like having your very own paramedics all the time. Well, being very naive, even though I was a physician, we were like, hey, that sounds like a great idea. That way, you know, we'll always have coverage. And so I asked the guy, well, you know, that sounds great, but wouldn't that hurt? And he goes, oh, no, that's not going to hurt. It'll just feel like a strong hiccup. I'm still looking for that guy today, okay? That does not feel like a strong hiccup when that goes off. But anyway, we decided to have a surgically implanted defibrillator. And I want to share this. This is actually a very interesting x-ray because it has 2 different systems in it. The original system, which you can see these wires connected to the larger device that's being passed around. And that device sat right up here. You can actually still see the imprint in my belly from where that thing sat for about 5 years. And these patches were sewn around my heart. So they opened up your heart. It wasn't open heart surgery, but they opened up your chest and they sew those patches. Those patches detect an arrhythmia and then they shock if they need to. Subsequently, as the technology got better and better and the device got smaller, now I have a system here which sits up here, and those wires go right down directly into the heart. So you can see the evolution of the technology in one X-ray. And so everything was great except I developed esophagitis postoperatively and ended up in the hospital for 28 days. And in short, I finally got discharged from the hospital 28 days later, 30 pounds lighter, and I couldn't walk. And my wife had to wheel me out of the hospital in a wheelchair. And so it was a very interesting time because I wasn't able to go back to my residency right away. I didn't know what I was going to do. And here I was with this brand new device, which actually we thought was just going to sit there and mind its own business and we'd never hear from it. A couple of stories. So one is, I remember Jeannie actually went to a wedding and she was kind of like my rock. And when she left, I slipped back into short-term memory issues again. And I remember walking down my hall, going to my mailbox, getting my mail, and I come back and my father was staying with me and I look at this mail and it says, Dr. Herman Williams. And I looked at my dad and I said, oh my God, I'm a doctor. And I had literally forgotten that I had been trained to be a physician, just to show you the magnitude. And then there was a time when my wife and I were preparing to get married, and we're Catholic, and in the Catholic religion, you're required to have premarital training. And so we were getting ready, and we were moving. I said, like, Jeannie, come on, we got to get going. We got to go. And we're moving, and all of a sudden, bam! I got my first shock from my defibrillator. And I said, oh my God, I don't know what just happened, but I think I just got shocked. And I just started crying. But we went on about our day. We called the doctor. The doctor said, look, if you get shocked once, it's not a problem. The defibrillator did its work. You don't have to go to the ED or anything. Just keep going. So we went back and we met with him, and he bumped my dosage of medication up, my antiarrhythmic, a little bit. Several weeks later, my brother came to visit us, and he and I are walking down the hallway to an appointment, and we were late then also. We're walking, and all of a sudden, bam! Shock number 2 in 2 weeks. Now I'm thinking, look, I can get by 2 shocks a year. Okay, that's worth it. But again, I started crying. It's just so incredibly painful. It feels like a horse kicking you in your chest from within. Again, I'm thinking of these life principles. I'm going to have to figure out what is going on, what I'm going to do, how I'm going to function with this new device. So my wife and I, for our honeymoon, decide to go out of the country with this brand new experimental device. And everything was fine until the day we were ready to leave and we were on the beach. Bam! Shock number 3. Now I'm saying, look, I can deal with 3 shocks a year. That's all, that's totally within normal limits. We got back home, they interrogated us, everything. They increased the medication, and we were fine. Then we had our wedding reception, which was set up in Seattle, Washington. I had everybody there. My ICU nurse, my mother, my father, my brother, my friends, the best man, everybody was there. And I was standing in front of everybody, and I started to thank everyone, and I said, look, I just want to tell everybody how much I appreciate what you've done, and bam! 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 3 shocks. We run over to the staircase, and I go sit down, and we go, okay, we've got to go to the ED, because now we're having multiple shocks. I get up, bam! Long story short, by the time we got to the ED, 7 shocks. Now look, I can deal with 10 shocks a year. As long as it's not more than that, I'm okay. So it's like I'm getting shocked all over the place. Okay? Let's just get the BAM count going here. 2 in August, 8 in September, 7 at the reception, 1. And then I got another 3 in October. So now this is really getting out of control. Okay? I'm afraid to leave the house because I think I'm going to get shocked if I get in public. I'm afraid to say the word defibrillator. That's my therapy now. Defibrillator, defibrillator. Because I was so superstitious that if I said it, I would get nervous and my heart would start racing and then I would get shocked. So we did not say the D word in the house. I started having phantom shocks. Proven in the literature. You can look it up on that incredible Wikipedia reference that everyone thinks is the gospel, but it'll tell you. Phantom shocks are for people who've gotten multiple shocks and you start dreaming that you're having shocks, when in fact they interrogate you and there's no shock. I finally got the diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disease. I was literally traumatized by this device that was also saving my life. So imagine the struggle within. I can't drive because you can't drive unless you're 6 months without a shock. So my wife had to take me everywhere. And then the cardiologist tells us, you know, we've been doing research on this new device, and if it is exposed to a magnetic field, it could go off accidentally. We've realized that people who are surgeons who use the bovie, which is the cautery that cauterizes vessels, that creates a magnetic field. Oh, by the way, the bovie might accidentally trigger your device if you're operating. So my surgical career was ended immediately. And I was getting shocked so much, it didn't even seem realistic to complete my residency anyway. So I was approached by a young physician who was also said he was learned in hypnotism. And he said, listen, if I can take you back to that moment where you had the cardiac arrest, I think we can resolve some of those internal, that turmoil that you have and get you to experience that and let all of that go. And I think it'll help you. Well, we're desperate. I said, sure, why not? So we go into his office. You're getting sleepy. And when I go count to 1, you will be back at your cardiac arrest. 5, 4, 3, 2, bam! 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 Shocked all over the place. Turmoil everywhere, Jeannie running, call 911, everybody screaming. This guy goes to get a hypodermic and he wants to inject Valium into me directly, not start an IV, he just wants to inject me. It's like we're all running around. I'm sitting there trying to say, okay, if I calm myself down, I can, bam, relax. Just let me calm down. The EMTs get in, they say, we need you to get on the stretcher. I say, I can't move because if bam, I'm gonna get shocked. And it was just crazy. When I got to the ED, I had been shocked 25 times. I'm done now. Now, this is not compatible with life because now the treatment is the device and not the medication. The treatment is supposed to be backup, right? We finally found a medication that would work, finally calmed things down. I actually went a month without getting shocked, 2 months, 3 months. Things started to even out. So again, I had to figure out what am I going to do with my life. I decided to take time off. I went back, got an MBA. That gave me 2 years to recoup physically, emotionally, but also to get myself trained again. Started with healthcare consulting, worked with Arthur Anderson for a while, worked with the Greeley Company for a while. Yay! Stacy and I worked together. And one of my clients hired me as a vice president of medical affairs, and I've been doing hospital operations for the last 17 years. So now I've got something to hold on to. I have a plan. I'm leading myself down that plan. Again, finding a new dream. And the importance here is, you know, these are very extreme, dramatic examples I'm giving you, but we all go through these little obstacles, little roadblocks. Don't let that govern you. Don't let that stop you. Don't let that kill your dream. And if it does kill your dream, come up with another dream. There's something else that you can do. Don't give up. And the funny thing about being in a situation where you're disabled is that it just seems like all of the environment wants to keep you disabled. They give you more money if you stay disabled. You know, I told them, I said, I was getting money from the state. I said, I want to go to school. Can I have some money to help me go to school and, you know, to pay my expenses? They were like, well, no. If you go to school, you're not getting this money anymore. So it's almost like there's no incentive to kind of get you going, or at least that was my experience. So the point for you all is don't give up. So now I'm in a position to lead others. As a physician executive, now I'm helping other doctors, helping other people, and this is my current job. Now I work for RCCH. We're a national healthcare company. We have 16 hospitals, soon to be 20 by the end of the year. When you think about the dream that I had, the singular dream to be one doctor, to be working on one patient at a time, and thinking about the impact that I wanted to make to help people compared to the impact that I have now with 12,000 employees, 20 hospitals, thousands and thousands of patients that we're treating, just think of how that dream is so small compared to where you are. So the other message here is you never know what is really intended for you. So sometimes when it seems like you've been turned down or you're like, oh, I can't be a doctor. And now look at what another door opens to something that's even bigger and greater. And again, I'm just blessed to be able to be in this situation. There are so many people who have issues related to their health, et cetera, that just they're stuck. They can't get out. So I'm really on a mission to kind of talk about that. So everything is going great. Basically, I had maybe 3 or 4 shocks in 2004. And then I had 2 or 3 shocks in 2006 that were really my fault because I had a low potassium and I didn't get it checked. So I got a couple of shocks. But for the most part, I haven't gotten shocked since 2006. So, you know, life is good, right? Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Except my doctor calls me one day. He says, look, there's a new article in the New England Journal of Medicine. It says people who have the condition you have, instead of taking Coumadin, which is a blood thinner, you can just take simple aspirin. You don't have to get your blood checked. You know, you can eat whatever you want. And I've said, well, if the New England Journal of Medicine says it, it must be true. So we switched over to aspirin. I stopped taking Coumadin. And 6 months later, I started developing an ulcer because of the aspirin. And I actually ran to the ED. It was the worst pain I'd ever felt. I thought I was having an aortic aneurysm, actually. It was so painful. But it turned out to be signs of an ulcer. He said, listen, stop taking the aspirin and come see me in 7 days and we'll figure out what we do. What do you think happened on day 6? Not a shock. Not a blood clot. This is another system, though. I had a stroke. What had been happening is that while I was on this aspirin, because it wasn't as effective as the blood thinner, I had been forming a small clot in my ventricle. And when I got in the hospital and they did an ultrasound, it was a 3-centimeter clot sitting in my ventricle that had gone up, and I had a stroke. And I woke up and I was aphasic. I couldn't speak, and I couldn't stand. And my wife, God bless my wife, what I put her through, in her wisdom, helped me get settled. We called 911. I got to the emergency room, and the doctor says, well, for people who present with symptoms of a stroke, what we typically do, we'll do an MRI, we'll figure out the extent of the stroke to determine if you need any interventional procedure. And we said, whoa, 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 I have a pacemaker. And if you have a pacemaker, you can't have an MRI because an MRI creates a magnetic field which will destroy all the programming in your pacemaker. So he goes, okay, for people who can't have an MRI, what we typically do is a CT with contrast. We say, whoa, 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 my kidneys are compromised, I can't have contrast. And he goes, we'll start the heparin and you're on your own. And I sat there for 3 days and couldn't speak. And on the third day, I got my voice back. And it became clear to me, what am I complaining about? It became clear to me. All of this stuff that is happening to me is for me to be a vehicle to communicate how precious life is, how blessed we are. I got the clarity, and that's why the title of the book is clear. It has really a double meaning. It's clear because that's what they say when they defibrillate you, but it's also the clarity through all of these things that have happened to me that allow me to appreciate how precious life is. And I was thinking about it as I was preparing to come here today, and just think through the thought process here. I was at a convention. I met Carrie. We started talking about a possible relationship with our companies. Carrie came with O'Neill and with Melissa to my office. I gave them copies of my book. They read the book. And through the vibe and the communication and the thinking, Melissa trusted her instinct to have this guy come and speak before her company, right? So the short answer is, if this is a flop, she'll get fired. That's not the point I'm making here, though. What I'm saying is the trust, the consciousness, all the steps that occurred, all the unspoken things, that's the beauty of life and the beauty of relationships that you build. The trust, the smiles, the winks, those are the kinds of things that are so precious. So I developed my mission. How many people have a mission for their life? Good for you, good for you. When I was in business school, there was a book called The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. And in his book, he talks about developing a mission. And excuse my language, but I was like, this is such bullshit, really? But it occurred to me when I got my voice back, what I am doing throughout my life is that everybody that I come in contact with, whether it's a 3-year-old kid in a supermarket, and I smile and I go, hi, how are you? Everybody, I try and have a positive impact so they are better off when they leave me than before they met me. And my son always tells me, Daddy, you are not supposed to talk to little kids at the supermarket. But it became clear what my mission in life is. I was already living it. I challenge you. You ought to have a mission, because today could be the last day you're here. Whether that mission is a family mission, a personal mission, whatever. What is the legacy that you're going to leave behind? I believe that there is something bigger than me. All of this is just too perfect for something else not to have contributed to its being, whether that's God, whether that's Buddha, whether that's whatever. My best friend thinks religion is the biggest hoax ever committed to mankind. But he believes that the universe has a spirit, and he believes in the universe, that it thrives on negativism and positivism. So if you give negative out, negative will hit you back, and if you give positive, positive will hit you back. So whatever that is, I believe there's something bigger than me. Don't give up, and don't let anybody tell you what you can do and what you can't do. Nobody knows that but you. Don't tell me what I can't do. Tell me what it takes to do that, and then let me decide whether I want to do it. But don't tell me at 18 I'll never become a doctor. It's just the craziest thing I've ever heard. And I've gone to Amherst College and spoke, and I spoke at San Diego State University, and I asked these kids, show of hands, how many of you have had counselors tell you you couldn't do something? And they're all like, you're in college. How can anybody tell you that? I graduated college, spent 3 years studying, went back to school to get into med school. Understand that resilience trumps pain. You just got to hang in there. It's not going to last forever. Right? And appreciate and accept the unwavering devotion of your loved ones can provide you with the power to succeed. My wife is, to me, the most perfect example of unconditional love. To have gone through all this, she didn't ask for this, and to still hang in there is just amazing to me. I can't even fathom what goes on in her mind, and I always tease her and joke and tell her, I know you're a robot, and every night she goes to sleep, I try and find that panel. I'm like, God, I know it's here somewhere. Because I just don't know where she pulls that strength from. But you need somebody in your corner. You need somebody to be your cheerleader. And by the way, if you have someone in your life who's telling you what you can and can't do, first tell them, I don't want you to do that. And if they can't, then you need to remove them. They're not in your best interest. It's painful, but I'm telling you, you need a cheerleader. All right, very quickly, the ABCs of life. And I call them the intentional levels of kindness. The first level is just a simple greeting, a smile. Costs nothing. It actually takes more muscles to frown than it does to smile. So it takes more energy to go around like this all day than it does to... This is a natural one, right? I see people, I mean, I'm just so crazy, but I believe in this whole power of interaction. Someone will smile at me, and I'll go, thank you, that didn't cost anything, now did it? You know, I mean, it's just so natural. A smile, a handshake, a wave, a look, and I'll tell you about in a minute. That happened to me. Number 2, opening a door. Lifting a suitcase. I travel so much, and yesterday was a classic example. You see these moms. This woman had one baby, she had another baby, she had suitcases, she had this, that. I mean, and nobody helps these people. It's amazing to me. I always try and help someone with a suitcase. Remember we were at the counter? She was trying to put her baby in the strap. I thought she was going to drop the baby, so I ran over, and I feel like I'm one of those people that's always thinking of the worst. But I just one step ahead, and people are so grateful for stuff like that. And I think it's those random acts that creates a ripple effect that causes people's behavior to change. I'll tell you one quick story. When I travel in Nashville, there's a guy who works at the shoe shine stand. And I'm getting my shoe shine. I had just, my company just found out we were bought by somebody else, and they were going to let me go. And I was going on an interview, and I'm just rambling. And he's listening, which is the other thing we need to do is be better listeners. He's listening to everything. And I'm done and everything, and I get ready to go, and I'm going to go on. And he goes, thank you, Mr. CEO. And I was like, you're damn right I'm a CEO. Yeah. That changed my life. That whole day, that changed the interview. It changed my perspective. That one little thing, unsuspecting person knew that one little thing. And we joke about, to this day, that was like 4 years ago. We still joke about that when we see each other. He still calls me Mr. CEO. But just having that little thing change my day. That's what I'm talking about, making someone better off after they leave you. Okay? And then the elevator test. How many people get in an elevator and don't say anything to the person who's like 2 feet away from you? That drives me crazy. So I always think of some little joke, like, what, we're the only ones working today? I mean, anything. And then that people open up and they start talking to you. Oh, yeah, well, it doesn't have to be small talk like the weather, but I always try and think of something, humorous. Things like, you know what, you look like $1 million. Are you going on an interview? Because people always want to know they look good, right? Now, you don't want to go, yo, baby, you look hot. Woo! Has to be tempered and it has to be sensitive. But I do this to both men and women. If I see a guy with a great tie, I'll say, I will swap my tie for that tie right now. I mean, people love that stuff. So just think about brightening somebody else's day. Number 3. And this is where, for me, I'm a physician. Medicine is a maze. And so if I know anybody who has a family member or someone who's in the hospital, I always offer, let me make a phone call. Because it totally changes the experience at the hospital. When you come in there and you're just Mr. Jones, but now you're Mr. Jones who had Dr. Williams call, oh my God, this patient knows a doctor. We better really make sure we're on our P's and Q's. I'll tell you, 99 times out of 100, the behavior, the nurses, everything changes. And so if you have a skill, if you're an attorney, or if you know something and you can help someone, an elderly person or someone else, this requires energy. And that's why it's a level 3. Okay, so anything that requires energy. I'm whipping through these really quickly. They're explained better in the book. And number 4, of course, is CPR. How many people in here, anybody ever given CPR to anyone? That's awesome. That takes an incredible commitment. That's not something that you start and you go, yeah, I won't do it. I mean, when you're in it to the result, right? Another level 4 is giving an organ. My wife was telling me about a friend of hers in Bible study who donated her organ to someone she didn't know. What? I just can't wrap my brain around that. Because you're giving an organ that you may need someday to somebody else who you don't know. It's just unbelievable. Unbelievable. So a couple of quotes and then we'll be done. The best thing about the future is that it comes one day at a time. So if you're dealing with something that is just overwhelming, just take it a day at a time. Just get through today. If you're on a project that's just take it a day at a time. Right? Irving Berlin said, life is 10% of what you make it and 90% of how you take it. I say life is 10% of what happens to you and 90% of how you react. Right? For me, because if I get really angry, I might get shocked. So when I'm driving and somebody cuts me off, I'm like, have a nice day. Right? My wife, who's from Boston, has different words for that person. Just ask yourself, did that affect me in any way? Let it go. And that's a small example, but 10%. I had a stroke. How am I going to respond to it? Is it the end of life? What if I could have never spoken again? I can write. I can type. There's technology. My life is not over. So it's how you want to interpret it. And I really think we have a culture that always leaps to the negative first. We don't leap to the positive. We leap to the negative. And so it takes a few minutes to think about, how can I turn this into a positive? and this is my favorite one. Life is not measured by the number of breaths you take, which are thousands, but the number of times your breath is taken away. The birth of my son. Our wedding day. When I woke up from my cardiac arrest, there are two things that people ask me. One is, and I'll say it the way it was asked to me. This guy in Texas, when I worked in Beaumont, Texas, and I was telling him this story, and he said, "Did you see the light?" I said, "What? Did you see the light?" Say that again. Did you see the light? No, I didn't see the light. I didn't have that experience. And then this other radio host, she said to me, "Oh my God, it was just such an amazing story. When you woke up, I mean, what was the first thing you thought?" And I said, well, the first thing I said, who won and how many points did I score? I mean, what else? All right. Let me just end with a quick epilogue. 1 year ago, May 16th, 2017, I'm in the Sky Club, and later this guy would tell me that when I walked in, we looked at each other, and I went, and he went, "What are you doing?" And I had a cardiac arrest, and I dropped. And this man and this woman started CPR. Now, the two things happen. One is my defibrillator is set to detect at 180 beats per minute and deliver a shock if it goes over. My heart rate was at 178. It was fast enough for me to pass out, but it would have never treated. So had these people not done CPR, I probably would have had a stroke or died or something. The second thing is it allowed me to understand that I'm always at risk of having an event, because you kind of get real cocky, you haven't had anything. You know, I didn't get a shock, but I passed out and I could have died. And these two people sat there, and this one woman, God bless her, she said her husband had died a year ago by himself. And she said, "While he did CPR, I held your head, and I said, 'You are not dying alone today.'" And I just wrap your brain around that. Somebody you don't know. The folks who work in the club, in my anniversary when I came through there this year, the same people were working that day a year earlier. And then I had an opportunity to give these two people the Hero Lifesaver Award for the American Heart Association. A couple of months. So let me end on that note. Thank you so much. So, questions? Who's got the mic? Oh.
Did you determine a causality of your condition, or was it idiopathic?
So it turns out that I have a rare heart disease. It's called right ventricular dysplasia. And just no history in my family. All the literature that's done is on people in Italy. So now I think they're finding it's more common. But yeah, very rare disease that just came out of nowhere. So if you have a heart history, get checked. Very simple. Do a treadmill, whatever. That's the other thing. People ignore their own risk factors, and that's unnecessary. Yes, ma'am.
What were some of the things that you were thinking when you couldn't speak when you were in the hospital?
That's a good question. I just kept thinking about, here I am again, and I just kept praying that I was going to get my speech back. And I was like talking and trying, because when you have a stroke, you understand, but it just comes out all different. And so I just kept praying that I was going to get my speech back. Good question.
Did you ever get angry?
Oh, yes. After the initial event, yeah, I was really angry and depressed and you know, the whole why me thing. Very, very angry early on. I started writing this book in 2000. It took me 17 years to figure out what it was I wanted to say. So it really, the stroke kind of made things a lot more clear. But there a lot of anger in those years in losing all that I worked for and not understanding that that was part of the story. That was just one component. Yes?
Has your personal mission changed as you've gone through these adversities? Or is it consistent?
I think it's consistent. You know, I came up with the mission statement in like 2015, 16, and I think it was reflecting on what I do normally and naturally. You know, so if you were, you know, a fly on my shoulder, you'd see, oh my God, it does it all the time. And my family, they just crack me up. Sometimes they're like, we don't know this guy at all. But I just, you know, I don't know. So it's a little risky sometimes, but I just try and find the humor and the feel good about every situation. Yes?
How long have you been public speaking?
Well, when I started as a healthcare consultant in '94, that's when I started doing public speaking. So that was a challenge because, yeah, at first I used to get anxious. And what I found out the real precipitator for me getting shocked is being in a hurry. And it wasn't the anxiety from speaking, thank God. Every time I had intimacy, I got shocked too. Did I leave that out? Right. So there are two blessings from God. Because we met a patient who, him and his wife, they got shocked repeatedly when they had intimacy. So one, we've never had a shock during intimacy, and the other thing is I've been able to continue speaking, and I almost use that as my therapy to not let that control me. So that's a very good question. And we were talking last night. Melissa was like, are you going to be nervous tomorrow? But you know what? I am at the point now, especially after the stroke, especially after last year, that whatever happens is going to happen. And I couldn't have prepared for that. That came out of nowhere. There were no symptoms. I wasn't tired. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't hungry. It just happened. And so I'm, you know, if today's my last day on earth, I've done it. I feel comfortable with what I've done and accomplished. And if you're not, you need to write it on paper, what it is you want to do before you die, and start doing those things. And so that also makes me comfortable. Because I told myself this morning, if I get shocked, okay, we'll deal with it. And, you know, so very good question. Thank you. Yes?
Oh, is it always something that you like think about, or is it just like, do you just go along, you know,
Yeah.
along with your days, or is it like always in the back of your mind?
Sometimes it's closer than others, but I think the farther you get away from your last event or your last shock, the less you think about it. But occasionally I'll get, you know, they call them preventricular beats. You'll get a little boom, or you'll get a pause, and you'll go, you know, and you think about it. But then, so like I haven't thought about it while I'm speaking today. So it's random. Yes.
How often do you have to have your pacemaker replaced, like every so often?
Yeah, so the pacemaker typically has a battery life of 5 years, unless you don't use it. I don't really use mine. Some people use it as a pacemaker. So like now, actually, we turned on the pacemaker function, so that might be shortened, but it's about 5 years. And then it has to be interrogated every 4 months. And they just put something over my chest, and the program, it reads everything that's happened on the device, and then it reports it on a computer.
Do you have like a Holter monitor at home that you can have?
I do. I have a wireless. All I have to do is walk by it, and it can pick up the information off the device. That's how sophisticated this thing is. Yes?
I assume you've mastered ways to kind of calm yourself and rest your heart rate.
Good question.
What are some of those?
Good question. So the book also talks about meditation, which I think is important in general, but I also use that to calm myself. And there's been a lot of research that shows that it has a physiologic impact on lowering blood pressure and other things. So that's why I use it. So yeah, that's in the book also. Yes.
Hi, I have a question for your wife. Hi, Jeannie. Hi. I just want, well, God bless you. You're amazing. How do you manage through the day-to-day fear of something happening again?
Like Herman said, if something doesn't happen and things are nice and smooth, when things are going smoothly and we have no issues, nothing to worry about, you get comfortable with that.
Yeah.
I do still think in the back of my mind every day if something happens, but I've learned over the course of the past 27 years not to worry about things. I've learned to teach myself somehow to cross bridges as I get to them. And so for me, I really try hard not to think about what's going to happen. I wait for it to happen. And if it does, then I deal with it to the best of my ability.
Yeah, so when the event happened last year, I've been on a drug for 26 years. That for me was the miracle drug. Nothing else worked. And the doctors thought that they saw some evidence that the drug was having an impact on my lungs. So they're like, stop the drug. And I freaked out because I'm like, now we're going to have to go through what we went through. And I was depressed. I was crying every day. Thank God, this one doctor said, I'm going to get a psych consult. So this guy comes in and talks to me. He says, what are you worried about? And I told him, I'm worried they're going to take my drug away. And, when you think about it retrospectively, that's what it was. They're going to take my binky away. I'm not going to have it anymore. And he goes, what are you afraid of? And I said, well, I'm afraid I'm going to get shocked again. And he said, well, is there anything that you can do about that? I said, no. And he said, well, why are you missing all of this life? The last 4 days you spent crying, you could have been enjoying life. There's nothing you can do. And it hit me. Why am I worried about something I can't control? Now, a year later, on 2 new drugs, seemingly okay. All of that worrying for nothing. So I think the message is that, just put it into perspective. Don't deny it, but don't let it control your life.
Thank you.
We'll take maybe just a couple more questions, and then we'll wrap it up. We'll be sensitive to time.
I know that you want to help others. What is one of the most rewarding outcomes that you've seen from your help?
The most rewarding thing that has happened was this young boy who I treated as a resident. And it's just an amazing story. He had a tumor, and we had to amputate his leg. And then I had my cardiac arrest, and he told his mother that he wanted to donate his heart to me when he found out he was going to die. And he said, I want to donate my heart to Dr. Williams because I'm not going to need it. That to me has been the most incredible thing and then I went to Seattle to do a book signing, and his mother told me that I was supposed to go to his room and see him the day I had my cardiac arrest, and I didn't make it. And I called him that night and apologized for not making it, and I sent him a dozen roses. And I was like, wow, I don't remember doing that, but how cool is that, right? But that, to me, for a 14-year-old to say, I'm not going to need my heart, not even knowing the process behind being a match and all, he says, look, I'm going to donate my heart to Dr. Williams because he can use it.
This question's for your son. Just knowing I know you weren't going to get away with us. I was wondering. How's that relationship been with your father? You know, understanding the history, obviously growing up and understanding what's going on and everything like that. How's that been growing up with your dad? And you know, I'm just thinking like checklist things, like, man, we got to go do this together, we got to do that, and you want to speed it up and do as fast as you can. So how's that been for you growing up, understanding that situation?
Well, for me, I have to thank them, I guess, in a way, but they kind of kept a lot of it away from me. I didn't see anything firsthand probably until I was in high school because, I mean, they were kind of okay with stuff for a while. And in high school, he had the stroke. That was the first time I really saw it firsthand. Like, I had heard stories, of course, but I saw it firsthand, and, you know, I had known what was gonna, what had been going on, and I had accepted, like he said, what will happen, and there's nothing you can do about it. Why worry about something you can't control, I could walk outside and get hit by a car right now, but there's nothing I can do about that, And so, for me, I just try to appreciate every moment I have with him. I remember when he had his stroke, when the ambulance left, I called one of my friends who lived down the street, and I just talked to him just to, I guess calm down. But I mean, it's just one of those things where you have to appreciate all the time you have and do what you can with it, He's tried to make a point to do things I like and vice versa, to the point that, I watch a lot of anime and stuff, and I wanted to go to an anime con, and he was like, all right, let's go. And so I've been doing that for the last, 3 or 4 years? Yeah, and so, he does what I like to do, I do what he likes to do, and, he asked me last week if I want to go golfing, and I did not say yes, I did also not say no. But it's that kind of thing. You just gotta enjoy what you have and make the most of it, because you never know when you might not have it anymore.